This poem is called We Acknowledge Ourselves. It was published in Poetry Magazine in their Land Acknowledgements issue, which was an open, blind call for Indigenous, or for all poets, I believe, to respond to land acknowledgements. And I submitted blindly, and my poem rose to the front of the magazine. And because of that honor, I also had an interview with the editor, also on Poetry Magazine's website. This poem is special because I wrote the poem, and then I talked to 3 people of my village in Kaktovik. I had them read it, or I read it to them, and I made changes based on their feedback. One of the people who read it was a tribal leader, and is, and another was an elder, is an elder, and the other is a woman named Fanny who allowed me to put her name in the poem. And she works at an office and lives in the village. I don't live in the village. I have lived there before. But because this poem deals with our history, I wanted to make sure I was recounting it right. And the only feedback that they had was that there's more that happened. And I changed one word that was crucial because of a relationship with a tribal leader. He said to put this one word in there. Tavra. We acknowledge ourselves. Before we bring this meeting to order, we want to acknowledge ourselves, the Kaktovik. Yes, Saloon, this is how they are doing things nowadays. We are doing it right. We acknowledge ourselves, the Kaktovik. We are the people of this island and of the mountains and the lands around us and all our traditional hunting areas. Since before the military came and bulldozed our old sod houses, our entire village, so they could make a runway. And yes, we are still angry about that, and we are still wanting reparations for what they did. They finally did take that hangar down, and it looks better without that big old thing on there. And I know we are still looking for what was lost in the Nuna on that day. What they did was wrong, and we are still here. Even though the military still today has that huge other hangar on the other side with that military man who lives in there that we have never met, and the other that relieves him every 3 weeks or so. We were here before. They put those big humongous radar ears up and then took them down, and yes, they left many barrels and still never got all of them. We want all their residue to be off our island forever. We were here before. The government started drawing arbitrary lines, encasing us into this wildlife refuge without our full knowledge or consent, where strangers break into our cabins on our own land up in the mountains each and every year, no matter how many signs we put up or what kind of locks we use. And because of these borders, not our own, we cannot hunt the way our relatives in other villages hunt. We have more restrictions and regulations than the others, yet we are still able to get the food we need around the land we care for and know. We are still fighting those arbitrary borders and lines today. Thank you, Ikuan. And also thank you, Analuk, for those letters you put out. They needed to see that. And all of us fighting our ways of life. And as we continue to fight, even in this strange language that we had to learn to fight them with, Ari! Bilak nga tanik dun o kagama. We acknowledge our elders that are still on this land, and our ancestors buried just over there and over there too, and our own people who are still living here, especially the little ones like Ukimailak there, Ukimailak here, and all our future relatives yet to be born. We acknowledge and remember that the military did experiments without our consent on our elders when they were kids. And the government has never owned up to these injustices. But we remember what was done. And yes, some of the elders did get compensated for that radioactive iodine they put in their veins, yet not the other forced experiments. And we remember how we were also made to send our young people away to go to school, and how they came back having to relearn their own language, and many of them left right away again. Yet many stayed home, and the others always return and belong home here. We, the Kaktovik, remember how we have always been whole. Nakurugut. We are good. We have always been good. Living here in the ways taught to us by our elders and our elders. And even though there were 2 waves of diseases we didn't know how to fight naturally, we lost many of our people, yet many of us survived those waves. And since we are talking about these things in a community hall meeting, might as well mention the alcohol that came to kill us. And the cancers, we can guess where those came from too, and the fog of smoke and cock that has stayed and lingered. And I know we aren't used to acknowledging ourselves. But when me and Fanny went to the big meeting in Anchorage, they did one of these land acknowledgements. So apparently everyone is starting to remember. And we remember too how to acknowledge one another, and how we remember our relatives, and how we are related. We remember how to sing and dance, and how to take care of the land. Because we need to acknowledge our young people too. Even the ones who are pretending they don't understand or can't talk yet. We know you are paying attention. Yet we also want to say the young ones have also been having a lack of listening, and they need to fix that right now. Oh, and of course, the animals, our relationship. Oh, and of course, our relationship to the animals. The akavik, the tutu, the fish, the nanuk, the kavik. Oh yes, the ivik and the beluga whale. And I know I'm forgetting some animals. Thank you, Iñupiaq. And we were here before the tourists started to travel here to see our polar bears without giving back to our community. And yes, we are starting to regulate those tourists too, as a community working together. Yes, the amokok. And I know we have too many animals to mention right now, and we need to get started with these door prizes soon. Let me say one more time, because I see Michael just came in the door. We, the Kaktovik, acknowledge ourselves sovereign here on our own land, sovereign here forevermore, despite all these other ways in which they could make us forget or think we were broken. We are whole and good, And we remember all of it. An unbroken line going all the way, all the way, all the way back. From the time before the time before. Nakuragot. We, the Kaktovik, the original people of this place, we have never ceded our lands. We always remember our long, long, long ago ways. That we are living even today. And even though we are thankful for the many modern tools that we put to use in the ways that our elders agree with, the outsiders' ways are not our ways. We belong here. And on our mountains and all the places that we travel for food and on the ocean, we remember who we are today and forevermore. We acknowledge ourselves in our power as Iñupiaq. Aulayak si Maragut, Kaktovik. Now, Alusurak will draw the first prize because I believe he is our elder here. We will draw a few more door prizes now at the start and then the rest at the end of the meeting. I know we have a lot to talk about. It's around this idea of being in the community hall of my village and how they would take in this idea of, you could record this, how they would take in this idea of land acknowledgement, which is like, well, how do we do that here? How do we do that in Kaktovik? Because we're the people of the land. So how do we acknowledge ourselves then? I guess that's what we would do. If we're going to do a land acknowledgement, then we'll acknowledge ourselves and our relationship to the land. But normally it's like other people saying we acknowledge these people of the land. But it's like, but we're the people of the land. So let's acknowledge ourselves. Let's acknowledge our history and where we're at. Okay, that was sweet in its own.